Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and my question today is, what do you think is the weakest Dalek story of the 70s? Now, what I consider to be the best decade of Doctor Who, with two of the best doctors, some of the best people behind the scenes working on the show, and some of the best companions, and some great Dalek stories. What do you think is the weakest? Now, I don't think too many people would say Genesis. Genesis is phenomenal. I certainly wouldn't say Day. I love Day of the Daleks. Even the original version of Day of the Daleks I enjoy. I think it's a strong story. The special edition, of course, just puts it over the top for me of being a great story. It's fantastic. I also like Death to the Daleks. Some people might say that, but I have a fondness for it. It does have the kind of weird cliffhanger with the floor. But other than that, great, solid story. I tend to love watching 3 and Sarah together, so it's another fun adventure for me. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because I feel like these will be the main two that come into play here, and that will be Destiny and Planet. Although some people might say Death, I guess. I can understand why people would pick Destiny. I once did a whole video calling Destiny the most mediocre Dalek story of all time. But Destiny has grown on me. Destiny is interesting to me, because while the production values are definitely not there, let's not even try to pretend they are. They're not. I find this one fun to rewatch. This one has a fun rewatch value to me. One, I really love Tom Baker in this. I just love the way he's playing the Doctor in this. He has some great dialogue in this. He's on fire here. Romana gets some fun stuff to do here. I like the writing in it a lot. It has some of that Douglas Adams humor. And then I enjoy the updated effects from the DVD carryover. I enjoy the new sound work that adds the proper voice modulation for Davros. Once you add those little tweaks to the story, it becomes a little more manageable. And it just has a strong rewatchability to me. I rewatch Destiny more often than I rewatch Genesis. Not because I think Destiny is better than Genesis. It isn't. Genesis is like that fine wine, like the Caves of Androzani, Inferno. They are those stories that are so good, you only take them off the shelf and savor them. Every now and again, you take a really long time between watches, so when you watch them, it kind of has a fresh feel to it. So you just take them down and savor them. Destiny is that kind of cheaper liquor that you can just grab whenever you want a little bit of liquor. That's still good liquor. Destiny, while not being top-tier Doctor Who, is just a fun watch. So it's easy for me to put it on and enjoy it and have another fun Tom Baker adventure. And again, I tend to like the dialogue between the Doctor and Davros. Not as good as what was in Genesis, but still fun. I think Dave does a good job with what he's got as Davros. For me, the weakest is Planet. I just don't get into Planet of the Daleks. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's so much of just a retread of the Daleks. It's like, why do I need to watch this when I've seen the Daleks? Granted, it's paced a little better than the Daleks. Being an episode shorter helps it a lot. While I don't know if I would say it's as good as the Daleks, or if it's better than I can't actually decide if Planet of the Daleks or the Daleks is better. I think the Daleks in color is better than both. Between the Daleks, Planet of the Daleks, and the Daleks in color, the Daleks in color might be the best just because of the runtime alone. Sacrilege, sacrilege. Oh, I can just see the comments now. They're going to be a buzzing. Feel free to pop down there and tell me exactly how wrong I am. But Planet, does have John in it. I always love John, so that's great. I love the episode 1 cliffhanger when he sprays and sees the Dalek there, and he's just like, Dalek! I love that cliffhanger, I do. But, like, the whole invisible Dalek thing is abandoned so quick, and then they switch over to the virus thing, and then you have the aliens that are invisible, but still somehow in captivity, which makes no sense. If they're invisible, you figure they could elude captivity. But it's great from a budget standpoint of, they're just invisible and wear these coats, so we don't have to make costumes. That's kind of clever, but it doesn't really work as a story point. I love having Bernard back, the guy who shows up in the mine robbery, shows up in the Deadly Assassin, he shows up in the War Games as kind of the head Time Lord at his trial. I like him a lot when he shows up in Doctor Who. He just has this really cool voice, that booming, authoritative voice. that's just born to lead and command. So I like when he's there, and I do enjoy him in Planet. And the rest of the Thals are good too. The story just doesn't really do much for me. I can rewatch Planet. Like, it's not one of those I'm like, oh no, Planet! But I don't get a lot out of it when I rewatch it. I mean, it's better than Power of Prowl. It's better than Delta and the Bannerman. Certainly not the worst classic Doctor Who story. Is it the worst Dalek story? No, definitely not the worst Dalek story in Classic Who either, as it's far better than The Chase. Again, between it and the original Daleks, I'd have to stop and think on that one. Just from an enjoyment standpoint, I'd probably give it the original Daleks the nod just for being the original Daleks. But from an enjoyment standpoint, I'd have to stop and think about it. Planet is an episode shorter. Again, I'd probably just put on the Daleks in color. Or the Peter Cushing Dalek movie and save myself some time. The Peter Cushing movie is really good. I've got both of the Cushing movies right here. I think the Flyattractor sent me those, which I very much appreciate. That was the first time I'd ever got to see them, and they're both fantastic, the Cushing movies. But I feel like it'll come down mostly to between Planet, Death, and Destiny. And for me, it's definitely Planet. Also, Planet fails on one other level in the fact that it's one of the two stories with enhanced updated effects where I prefer the original version. Almost universally, when a Doctor Who story has updated effects, I'm going to prefer the updated effects. Now, in some of those cases, I don't mind either way. Like the 5 Doctors, I like all 3 versions. The original 83 version, the 95 version, and the new 2023 version. I enjoy all 3. I probably like the 2023 version the best, slightly, with the original taking second and the 95 one being third. But I enjoy all 3 of those. And several of the updated effects options are like that, where I can watch the original version just fine and enjoy it. It's not much of a preference. Talons of Wing Chiang, I'm fine with either version. Slightly prefer the updated version. But almost universally, to one degree or another, I do prefer the updated effects. But there are 2 stories where I just hands down prefer the original effects. The updated effects don't work for me. One of those is Planet of Fire, which is partially just because the effects look awful. They just look, the CGI just looks so bad. It just looks awful. And then I don't like the edit down cut of it with the widescreen. All of that just snowballs into me not liking it. Which is the exact opposite of Enlightenment. The 2009 movie-length 16:9 version of Enlightenment is my favorite version of Enlightenment, while also enjoying all 3 versions of Enlightenment. Planet of the Fire, it's just awful. Especially when there's actual fire running around and nobody seems panicked by it. Like they run right by a column of fire and they're fine. They're not even sweating. Like they're not worried about their clothes catching fire like Anakin Skywalker. They're just, what fire? So it doesn't work for me. My willing suspension of disbelief is going, nope, no, 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 no. Planet of the Daleks is the other one. The effects just look so cheap. And I'm not saying the updated effects always match the material, because a lot of times they don't. Even Day of the Daleks, which I love the updated effects for Day of the Daleks. But they don't look like they were CGI made in the 70s, while still not looking like Avengers Endgame either. I can tell they were done later. And it's fine, it doesn't bother me, they look great. But for some reason, it's just so bad in Planet of the Daleks. Especially stuff like the Dalek ship landing and taking off. The original model looks way better. I'm not saying it looks great, but it looks better. The CGI of the Daleks in the caverns, when it's showing them, then them getting flooded, looks a lot worse than the actual model work of that in the original. The the cliffhanger of episode 1, when the Doctor spray painting the Dalek, looks terrible with the CGI version, whereas I love that cliffhanger. It's my favorite part of the episode, in episode 1 of the original version. Now, there's a couple parts where the updated effects look good, like when you see the eye from the point of the view of the Dalek, when you see it looking around, I think in episode 3, does look better in the updated effects. And the scene when the Doctor talks about all the creatures out there and it shows all the eyes of the creatures out there light up, to me that also looks better in the updated effects. But it's only a couple things where everything else in the story, it just doesn't work. So for me, personally, that's another hit against Planet of the Daleks and another reason why it's my least favorite Dalek story of the 70s on top of everything else. It's one of the 2 stories where the updated effects, I'm like, think I'll go with the original effects here every time. Whereas most of the other stories, I'm either going updated effects, or sometimes I might take the regular just because I hadn't watched them in a while. So I want to know what you think. What do you think is the weakest Dalek story from the 70s and why? And also, if you agree with me that the Daleks in color is definitely better than the original Daleks in Planet of the Daleks, you can go ahead and praise my opinion on that down there as well. So let's talk about it. Don't forget to click the like button and the subscribe button and the bell for notifications as well. I also have a link to my Patreon down there in the description if you would like to support me on my Patreon, if you agree with all those wonderful things I'm saying, like how amazing the Daleks in Colors is. Love that one. Matter of fact, somebody sent me the Blu-ray of it right here, which I very much appreciate. I'm losing my train of thought. I'm in a good mood today. I'm really energetic. I think it's the haircut. Haircut, fresh shave, feeling good. But if you would like to support me on that, my Patreon link is down there. I certainly appreciate it. I want to give a shout out to Colin Coney, who's been a huge supporter of the channel, one of my top tier patrons, and I appreciate his support as I do the support of all of my patrons and YouTube members. Very much appreciated. A link to the Amazon wish list is down there. A link to the Amazon UK wish list is also down there. Check those out. They've been updated recently. And the P.O. box is down there as well. I love getting fan mail, so feel free to send anything you might want me to take a look at or a listen to. I have been delving into Big Finish more lately. If there's any Big Finish stuff you'll want me to check out. Most importantly, thank you for watching, and don't forget to watch the Daleks in Color.